Breaking news. Donald Trump is right back on the campaign trail. Today, he's in the swing state of Michigan. I'm Harris Faulkner, and you are in the Faulkner Focus. We have learned so much more now about the suspected would-be assassin in Sunday's assassination attempt on Trump's life. Ryan Ruth echoed talking points from the Democrats' political attacks on former President Trump. Republicans quick to call that out. They say words do matter.
If you're constantly telling them that American democracy is going to end if this guy gets elected president, well, somebody is going to feel that they're justified for doing this. And so I do think the apocalyptic rhetoric has increased the threats to Donald Trump. No question about it.
The guy was completely unhinged. And if you layer on top of that this constant narrative from the left that Trump wants to sell Ukraine out to the dictator Putin, he wants to become a dictator himself, and that no matter what, by any means necessary, Trump has to be stopped.
And look at what people at the very top of the Democratic Party have been saying about Trump this election cycle.
He's a genuine danger to American security.
Don't give them the power. Look, are they a threat to democracy? Yes. Are they going to take our rights away? Yes.
In this moment, our fundamental freedoms are on the ballot. And so is our democracy. Let me just say something. We are fighting for a democracy. Donald Trump is an existential threat to our democracy and our most fundamental freedoms.
Well, the Trump campaign is posting even longer lists of similar claims from other Democrats, and critics are calling out a Washington Post column in reaction to that. Another chance for Trump to frame Democrats as dangerous has emerged. It adds that Trump world is eager to have Americans blame his opponents' rhetoric for assassination attempts, both to nullify their own arguments and to cast Trump as a victim, end quote. Well, look, they can say that, but here are the facts. Fewer than 120 minutes later, after the attempt to kill Trump a second time, the powerful House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries posted this: "Extreme MAGA Republicans, we must stop them." A former CNN host appeared on his old network so he could say, Trump wants Democrats to stop saying that he is a threat to democracy, then he should stop threatening democracy. Democratic Congressman Mickey Sherrill, also on CNN, quote, "The rhetoric is getting amped up to very volatile lead levels on one side of the aisle." She was talking about Republicans, of course, and blaming the victim when the man who was the target is a Republican. GOP Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance points out one very big contrast between these two political parties.
I'm not going to say we're always perfect. I'm not going to say that conservatives always get things exactly right. But you know the big difference between conservatives and liberals is that no one has tried to kill Kamala Harris in the last couple of months, and two people now have tried to kill Donald Trump in the last couple of months. I'd say that's pretty strong evidence that the left needs to tone down the rhetoric and needs to cut this crap out.
Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy, obviously live outside the White House now. Peter.
Harris, there's no reason to think the Harris campaign thinks they need to change the text in her teleprompter after this second apparent assassination attempt, because they didn't think they needed to after the first one.
How has the rhetoric changed in light of the assassination attempt with the being here at the RNC and representing the DNC and Biden-Harris administration?
It hasn't changed.
And he went on to say they are just focused on the issues. But over the last two campaigns, it hasn't all just been focused on the issues.
If you had to be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions, who would it be?
Does one of us have to come out alive?
And the Trump team is pointing to clips like that one, several years old, to back up their claims that Biden and Harris are inspiring assassins.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized.
And if you look at recent history, President Biden has actually pumped the brakes on his own rhetoric just before dropping out for telling donors to put Trump in a bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing. Focus on his policies. Focus on the number of lies he told in the debate.
That's as much walking back as anybody around here has done over the last several months. If President Biden is going to talk about this today, it'll be any minute at an Oval Office briefing about the wildfires out west. Harris.
All right. And of course, our team is monitoring that as well as you. If there's any breaking news on this, we'll bring it to everybody. Peter Doocy, thank you for getting us started. Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor and former Republican congressman of Utah. Look, I can only imagine both on the Hill and for those of you who have served the nation as its leaders off the Hill now, are talking about the mission to keep Donald Trump alive. What's that conversation like?
Well, it shouldn't even be a topic, but the reality is we have a Secret Service that is failing us. They're not living up to the job, duty, and responsibility. But at the same time, the rhetoric, we got to be really careful. Not everybody has the ability to process information and put it into context. And so when you keep saying Russia, 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 and he's an agent of Russia, and you keep saying he's a threat to democracy, is a threat to the country. And if you're having that kind of language out there in a regular drumbeat from the leaders of the Democratic side of the aisle, there's just one or two that it takes to act on it. And unfortunately, we've seen a couple of instances on that. There's lessons to be learned on both sides. But the balance right now from the Hillary Clintons of the world and the others, it is so out of control. It is fundamentally totally wrong.
Well, and theirs is going to get so much more coverage because the negative coverage against Trump is kind of baked into, if you will, the liberal playbook at this point. Yeah. So whatever they say gets amplified. A new op-ed to that point says that the left's apocalyptic rhetoric about Trump only increased after the first assassination attempt. Another quote, for Democrats to denounce political violence while leading their supporters to think that freedom is finished if Trump wins isn't just hypocritical, it's culpable. And you've heard me say many times, it's complicit. Jason.
It is complicit. Now, at the same time, I think guys to continue, no matter the rhetoric, no matter what's happening out there, to just stay on message, talk about America, talk about its future, talk about what he did as president, talk about what he wants to do for the country. Don't take the bait. I think any day that Democrats can not talk about their policies is a good day for Democrats. I think they're willing to take this hit for the next few days and weeks on end, because if they don't talk about policy, they think they can win.
That is fascinating.
That's hard. Superman and Yoda, do you think they ever said, did you hear what they said about me? Did you hear what Taylor Swift said? Don't take that bait. Just go out and be the strong leader and save the world, save this country. Talk about what you're going to do. That's the powerful message that I think America wants to hear.
All right. And you're asking Trump to stay on it. All right, we've got to go. This may be about the attempted assassination on Donald Trump. We've been monitoring this. The nation's Attorney General Merrick Garland. Let's watch.
Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida and the National Security Division are all coordinating closely with our local state law enforcement partners on the ground. We will all work together to tirelessly determine accountability in this matter. We will spare no resource in this investigation. It's an honor to be here today as we celebrate 30 years of the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Service. It's fitting that the department is celebrating the COPS office with our community partners, because it is these community partnerships that have made the work of the COPS office possible. Whether you're a current or a former COPS office employee, community member, an advocate, a law enforcement professional, a city, state.
So we knew this event was coming up and that it wasn't specifically about any investigation into the now second attempt to kill Donald Trump by a would-be assassin suspect. So the minute he brought that up, we wanted to bring it to you, but you saw he didn't hit it for very long. So now that he's moved on with his previously planned comments on a different topic, we'll move on too. I want to bring back Jason Chaffetz now. So we were talking about your words for Donald Trump not to take the bait from the left and digging in even deeper on that left side of the aisle with toxic rhetoric, potentially dangerous rhetoric. But in any regard, it's toxic. I want to know, what are the next steps, do you think, politically in all of this? They can't spend too much time on that. Like when you hear Hakeem Jeffries, and he's a friend of yours. By the way, I should tell the audience, I know him because you introduced me to Hakeem right before I interviewed him. How far can they stay in this vat of hate and toxicity against Trump and not seem like they really don't have any other ideas?
Well, they don't have any other ideas. And remember, the core of their thesis in electing Joe Biden and now Kamala Harris is unity. They were going to be joyful. And so I think America figures out that these joyful warriors, they're mean, they're vile. They don't mean what they're actually saying. They'll do whatever they need to do to get elected, but it has nothing to do with being joyful and uniting the country. And one other total side point, I got to point this out. Where is Alejandro Mayorkas? He's the Secretary of Homeland Security. He's the one that's in charge of the border. He's the one that's been importing people by the hundreds of thousands and millions of people. He's the one in charge of the United States Secret Service. How come we don't hear from him? How come he's not answering questions? Instead, we have the Department of Justice, who's actually not in charge of the Secret Service, out there talking. Why don't we hear from Mayorkas?
Not to mention the fact that they are down 1,500 people in staff. We don't even know how high up those positions go, so maybe some of them could be assets to protect this former president and other leaders too. But having his voice and his presence in this is necessary. And it's tied into Texas, as you know, different topic real quick, designated that gang from Venezuela that's so dangerous now on our soil as a terrorist organization. You think he'd come out and speak on that? That just happened. So much going on his watch to watch the homeland. It's embarrassing for him. They tried to impeach him and kick him out. It didn't work. Jason Chaffetz, thank you. New information now on just how the suspect got so close to President Trump on that golf course in Florida and how long he was hanging out in the area. We know that he had enough food and he was out there for about 12 hours, but what was happening with that suspect? Criticism for the USS Secret Service already is red hot. You heard some there from Jason Chaffetz. And now it's getting hotter. Plus, that Venezuelan gang I just mentioned is expanding inside the United States. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is taking matters into his own hands now.
We know that if we don't stop this now, it could spread rapidly across our state, endangering people across our state. We have one goal, and that is to arrest them.
All right, well, that gang is bringing violence to our cities, far from the border, New York, Miami, new information, and frightening fresh video. Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee in Focus next. New numbers from Customs and Border Protection show the truth. More than 1.3 million people have been let into the United States through controversial Biden-Harris administration programs. The truth. They slowed down the border a bit in the hottest months this summer and quietly let in high numbers of people in other ways. The administration, the Biden-Harris administration and White House, are creating or using lawful alternatives to illegal entry. So they're swapping it out. More than 500,000 people have flown into the United States on flights from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Another 800,000 scheduled were admitted through ports of entry using the CBP One app. Remember how the migrants at the border were upset? The border crossers were saying the app was overloaded. They couldn't get it to work. That's the app. Well, some of these people have committed violent crimes since being allowed into America, which includes incidents involving the violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, or TDA. Reports of their brutality continuing to rise. This is new video now of more than 100 suspected TDA gang members. They were part of the massive group of people that rushed the southern border earlier this year. This is them. They're here now. Yesterday, Texas Governor Greg Abbott had had enough. He announced a major crackdown on those gang members that you see in the middle of your screen.
I am officially declaring TDA a foreign terrorist organization. Make sure TDA understands when they come to the state of Texas, they're going to face the heavy hand of law enforcement with a robust, literally hundreds, if you count all the local law enforcement, thousands of law enforcement officers who are focused on TDA. They have a target on their back, and we're going after them.
In focus now, Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn of the great state of Tennessee, member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. Look, I want to tap into what's happening on the Hill. I can't imagine there wouldn't be a lot of pressure for leadership across the country to put the easy-hanging fruit, low-hanging fruit of this organization designated as a terror organization.
And indeed, there should be. This organization, they are violent, they are criminal, and yes, Harris, this organization should be labeled a foreign terrorist organization. And I appreciate that Governor Abbott has stepped up and taken the lead on this. TDA is across the country, and what you're seeing is crimes across the country where they are going, all of this criminal activity. Look, as we've said many times, every town's a border town, every state's a border state. You've got this administration working overtime to try to make illegal entry legal so they can say they've gotten the numbers down, whether it's the app, whether it's flying them in. The point is this. These are criminal, illegal aliens. It's why I have the CLEAR Act, which allows local law enforcement to apprehend these people, to hold them, requires ICE to deport them within 48 hours and then pay back the local law enforcement agency for what they spend apprehending and detaining these individuals. Here is another thing to look at. Under the Biden-Harris administration, 382 known terrorists have come into this country. 382. Under President Donald Trump, it was a total of 11. This is a 3,000% increase. Harris, these people have to be apprehended. They have to be locked up. They have to be removed from our country.
Look, I know you're on the Senate Judiciary Committee and you're not handling court cases time again, but there have to be a few that you keep your eye on. When TDA hits our court system, is it flagged? Do you get a flag on Capitol Hill in your email that says, we've got a really, really bad guy now? I mean, I'm just wondering, are we keeping up with him? Because you know I'm asking this question. They leave, they come back.
That's right. That's exactly right. No. Why don't we send these known terrorists to Gitmo and keep them locked up there? We don't get a flag. We don't know where they are in the court system. We find out about it through news reporting just like everybody else does.
That's dangerous for all of us. And if anybody should have it, it should be the Judiciary Committee. I mean, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As I said, 382 terrorists. That is not our number. That is DHS. Mayorkas, of course, I thought he should have been fired long ago. But he doesn't have a handle on this. He doesn't have a handle on the number of children that have been lost. He doesn't have a handle on the Secret Service. The list of failures continue to grow. It makes our country less safe. It makes our communities less safe. It makes our families less safe because these gangs are committing robberies in every state across this country. They are endangering people. People are being harmed. It is time for DHS, it is time for this administration to actually do something about securing the border. The border czar didn't want to do it, but somebody needs to do this.
Well, he couldn't fire Kamala Harris, but he can fire Mayorkas. And he hasn't done it yet, Biden. And she hasn't publicly spoken of doing it either. And they're supposed to be, you know, together, no daylight between them. Her team's told us that. It's come out of his mouth, Biden's mouth. They are close on all the big decisions that affect our lives. get rid of Mayorkas. Republicans tried it on the Hill. Now it's time for the president to do his job and fire this man and replace him with somebody who can do the job. Senator Blackburn, thank you for being with me.
Always
Speaking
good to be with you.
of people who are having some problems with, and what the senator was getting to there with all the children were the sex trafficking cases that we know of. This does not necessarily involve children, but it does involve charges of sex trafficking. Sean Diddy Combs now facing charges including racketeering, sex trafficking, kidnapping, and forced labor. We expect to hear from federal officials soon, and we'll bring you that on the rapper, P. Diddy. Plus, the second assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump is raising some big questions about obvious things that were missed by authorities.
An agent that was paying attention noticed something out of the ordinary, but this should be detected much earlier and prevented and disrupted.
Well, even people on the liberal side of the aisle, the liberal media, saying it's essential to step up security around the former president. Former FBI agent Nicole Parker in Focus with me next. Breaking news now. We understand at any moment, and that's why we're watching that microphone with the lectern there, that the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Damian Williams, is going to reveal the charges against Sean Diddy Combs. He's going to tell us what the unsealed charges are now. Now, we know some of the topics that the charges fall under: sex trafficking, racketeering. But now we'll learn with more specificity of what's in that indictment against him. Remember, he was arrested hours ago at a hotel in Manhattan. And I believe this is the attorney for the Southern District, the U.S. Attorney. Let's watch.
Southern District of New York. Today I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution. The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. As alleged in the indictment, to carry out this conduct, Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice. Let me say a little bit more about the charges. The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years, and in a variety of ways. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. On one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video and later reported in the media. Specifically, Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a victim in a Los Angeles hotel when the victim was attempting to flee. As alleged, these assaults often resulted in injuries to the victims, which took days or weeks to heal. In addition to the violence, the indictment alleges that Combs threatened and coerced victims to get them to participate in the freak-offs. He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims. And the indictment alleges that he maintained control over the victims in several ways, including by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunities, by monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance. Because of all of this, the indictment alleges that the victims did not believe they could refuse Combs without risking their security or facing more abuse. The indictment also alleges other acts of violence undertaken by Combs and others, including violence against witnesses to his abuse, kidnapping, and arson. The indictment alleges that on more than one occasion, Combs carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten victims and witnesses. Now, Combs did not do this all on his own. As I mentioned, Combs has been charged with RICO conspiracy. He used his business and employees of that business and other close associates to get his way. Those individuals allegedly included high-ranking supervisors in the business, personal assistants, security staff, and household staff. The indictment alleges that those individuals facilitated the freak-offs. They booked the hotel rooms and stocked them with the supplies, including drugs, baby oil, personal lubricant, extra linens, and lighting. When the hotel rooms got damaged, they helped clean it up. They arranged for victims and commercial sex workers to travel for large quantities of cash to Combs to pay for the commercial sex workers. The indictment also alleges that they helped Combs cover up his crimes. During the March 2016 incident at the LA hotel that I mentioned earlier, a member of the hotel security staff intervened, and Combs attempted to bribe the staff member with a stack of cash to make sure that what happened was kept quiet. And as the indictment alleges, in late 2023, after public allegations were made about Combs' crimes, he and others pressured witnesses and victims to stay silent, including by making phone calls to witnesses and victims and giving them a false narrative of what they had experienced. And as alleged, Combs used others to help conceal his abuse by monitoring and preventing victims from leaving a location in order to hide their injuries, or by locating and contacting a victim who had attempted to flee. As part of this investigation, in March of this year, special agents from HSI executed search warrants at Combs' residences in Miami and Los Angeles. They also executed a warrant for Combs' electronic devices. During those searches, agents seized evidence of the crimes charged in this indictment. They seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 defaced AR-15s and a large capacity drum magazine. They also seized evidence of the freak-offs, electronic devices that contain images and videos of the freak-offs with multiple victims. And they seized cases and cases of the kinds of personal lubricant and baby oil that Combs' staff allegedly used to stock hotel rooms for the freak-offs, more than 1,000 bottles altogether. Here are some of the items that we recovered during the searches. As you can see here, this is a drum magazine, large capacity, and it contains, I believe, 59 rounds. I mentioned as well, we recovered 3 AR-15s. This is a close-up shot of one of the AR-15s, and you can see right here, the serial number has been thoroughly defaced. Another picture of more ammunition and parts of 2 AR-15s right there. Now, I want to be clear about 2 things. First, this office is determined to investigate and prosecute anyone who engages in sex trafficking, no matter how powerful or wealthy or famous you may be. No one should doubt our commitment on that. A year ago, Sean Combs stood in Times Square and was handed a key to New York City. Today, he's been indicted and will face justice in the Southern District of New York. Second,
Bữa cơm tháng 12. Bữa cơm tháng 16. Bức cách thứ 18. Hàng em bên bức cách thứ 8. Bức cách thứ 5. Bức cách thứ 10. Bức cách thứ 15. Bức cách thứ 20. Hàng em bên bức cách thứ 9. Bức cách thứ 6. Bức cách thứ 7. Bức cách thứ 11. Bức cách thứ 17. Hàng em bên bức cách thứ 10. Bức cách thứ 3.